Hello again. In this video, let's talk about Agentic AI applications. You know the drill by now. You're supposed to read through the lecture materials and then come and watch the video. So if you haven't done that, pause the video, do it, then let's continue with the video. Okay, so this lesson talks about real-world applications of Agentic AI. I expect what you did was scroll through the applications listed here, gave it maybe 20 seconds of thought, maybe thought that this looked all reasonable, and there's really not much to think about, right? So let's test the knowledge then, okay? Let's actually see what you have understood from what's provided here in the lesson. Okay, so when do we use Agentic AI? So in this one, it's not really a test, so you can relax a little bit here. What we are going to do is to try to understand what patterns we saw in those applications. Really, how do we know when to use Agentic AI versus when to use something else? So I've mentioned this before, there's a lot of other tools, techniques you could be using. Not every problem needs Agentic AI. In my experience, when I see a problem which needs Agentic AI, really there is no other solution to it, and this is the only way I could solve it. And that's good because Agentic AI is a little bit complex to use and to get it to work. So I only use it as a last resort, really. That's been my use cases here. Okay, so how do you spot Agentic AI use cases? The tasks are ambiguous, goal-driven. Typically, you need to use multiple tools, maybe get data from different sources in different formats. And you need to think, you need the system to think through the steps. There's some reasoning, some delegation, some decision-making happening there, right? So let's contrast with other potential techniques out there. I mentioned RPA before. It's really used for very repetitive tasks, and there's very specific structured input and output to those steps. You can use RPA for that. Machine learning, I'm sure you've seen a lot of applications for machine learning, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning. So hopefully I don't need to get into that. OR, or operations research, usually you would be using it for applications where you need to optimize something and you have very clear quantified inputs and relationships between them. So it's a very powerful technique for that. It's usually more specifically used for predictive modeling rather than, prescriptive modeling rather than predictive modeling. And then finally, open-ended goals involving various steps, tools. We are using Agentic AI, right? And of course, there's other techniques like probability and statistics, simulation modeling. There's many more you should be aware of. So the mental model I use is to think of it like, is there a project that I would give to a smart assistant, right? There's some thinking you expect them to do by themselves, and it's a simple enough task. It's not too complex. Notice I said smart intern on the page. I didn't say a smart manager, smart director. So we are still talking about easier tasks here. And of course, it's not so well defined that it's like running a vending machine, right? So that's a job for Agentic AI. There are trade-offs here. I would not use Agentic AI in cases where you have certain criteria that are must-have, such as in compliance-related applications. I'm just not sure because of the non-deterministic nature of these things, and also a lot of concerns about privacy and other such considerations. Explainability, yeah, this is one of the key parts here, that in a lot of business applications, when decisions are being made, especially high-stakes decisions, then there needs to be some traceability and some explainability in these solutions. And this is where sometimes Agentic AI can be problematic. I am going to talk about an example from my earlier days after I finished my PhD. You don't have to hang around if you don't want to hear stories, but I can get into why explainability is such an important consideration. So this is the main takeaway from this lecture is, again, just knowing how to identify use cases where Agentic AI would be the best tool to use. All right. Let me get into the story again. You don't have to hang around if you're not interested in other examples. But yeah, so as you know, I mentioned it in my introduction video. My PhD is in operations research, and when I first graduated with my doctoral degree, this is something I think I can. Well, maybe I am doing this on behalf of all PhDs, but I hope they don't mind it. Every PhD that comes out, they're afflicted by two things. One, they want to save the world, and two, they want to throw all of their newly acquired doctoral knowledge into the first project they see. So that's what I did. I was put on a project for a major financial services organization, a pretty big problem to solve, and so I worked on it for about 6 months, maybe 9 months, and I pretty much threw everything I knew about OR in that one particular problem. I I use integer programming, this branch and bound, cutting plane technique. There was even a dynamic programming application there. It's like multiple systems put together into one monstrous application. And I was very proud of it. And demo day, I'm doing the demo. It's a 1-hour meeting. There's a pretty high-level VP from the financial services organization. There's also their head of statistical group, a PhD, in their meeting. And so I did the meeting, and then 30-40 minutes after the demo, I stopped and asked for questions. I'm expecting them to literally break into applause at that point. Well, there was a little bit of an awkward silence, and then, well, the VP didn't say anything. The PhD, statistics PhD, then said, "Abu, this is never going to work with us. This is far too complex. This is something that our managers will be using, and they have trust issues. They don't really use things that they don't understand. And I had a hard time understanding this. There is zero chance they will understand it, and it will never work." And when we are making high-stakes decisions using systems like this, explainability is a pretty important consideration for us. At that time, I got pretty upset. Now I don't get upset at this because I know she's right, that the person who said this was right. So it's an important thing to bring up here is explainability. I listed this on this slide specifically for that reason, is when you have systems built that make decisions, if there's no good explanation of how these decisions are being made, you're going to have a problem. Now, agentic AI, in a way, you can make it trace using whatever chain of thought or other techniques, make it explain, but it's not really what's happening inside the LLM, right? Maybe it's something that you can use to justify the decisions that are being made or the outputs that are being generated. But this is one of the concerns you should always be aware of, is the end user of your system. If it's not you, if it's someone else, put yourself in the shoes of that person and try to understand their mindset. It will save you a lot of trouble. This is where a lot of projects fail, is because the requirements weren't very clearly specified. All right, that's it for this lecture. Thank you. I hope you found it useful.